we are reading uh, this book, Door-to-Door Bookstore, right? And many of you join, then you go away, then you come back. Sometimes you've joined recent. May not quick recap. Book is about all. It's set in a town in Germany. Carl Kollhoff is basically, uh, has been working at the Citygate bookstore. He's a very avid reader, and his role at the bookstore now is to deliver books to customers to their houses, right? So he's 70 odd years old. So this is what he does, right? And then as the progresses, uh, a 9 to 10-year-old girl, Shaska, wants to accompany him to his customers, and he doesn't want her to come, but she just tags along and goes along with him and literally forces herself onto him. And then he starts enjoying her company. And on the other side, on the bookstore owner passes on the management of the bookstore to his daughter, uh, and we come across he passes away as well. Has this habit of giving all his customers names from the books he's read. Right. So there's Darcy from Pride and Prejudice. Mr. Hohenhesch is the name of the person, but he calls him Darcy because he reminds him of Darcy from Pride and Prejudice of Jane Austen. So like that, he's got names for everybody: Hercules, Mrs. Longstocking, Effie. He's got different names for different people. And after a few visits, Shaska tells him that you know you uh, you keep giving people books they want, they're not necessarily good for them, right? So you give Effie wants tragedies to read, you keep giving her tragedies to read. Well, that's not good. Maybe you want to give her a book of jokes. Darcy always reading a particular type of book. He's always indoors. Give him something to do with his hands. And so Carl doesn't agree with that. But what Shaska does is Shaska, out of her own pocket money, gets these books from somewhere else and gives it to them. Right? She gives Effie a book of jokes. She gives Darcy a book on carpentry. She gives other people different books, and they appreciate it. Right? So then, slowly, Carl comes around to this view that he should also give them books that they really want, and that starts to do well. And then he gets involved in helping his customers. Uh, for example, somebody called Reader, who's called Reader because he reads uh, in a cigar factory over there, and he's written a book, and it's a very good book, but he's very shy, and he doesn't want to talk about it. So they in the cigar factory where he reads, they replace the book he's reading with his own book, which Carl had the manuscript of, and everybody loves the book. And he Hercules is somebody who actually can't read, and Mr. Longstocking is a teacher, and he connects them so that Hercules can read. So he starts to do uh, these things which are for the good of customers. In the last chapter, what we read was that Effie has a problem with her husband. Her husband, uh, engages in beating her up, a lot of domestic violence, and so they come across that. They call the police. The police come. The police. Um, Effie doesn't say anything to them and says, "No, no, all is well," because the husband says that they were just the screaming was basically from the TV, and the police goes away. But when they go and tell this to a nun, uh, and he calls her amorous because she Amaryllis is a lily, and so that's what she reminds him of, which is there's beauty and there is solidity, uh, and certain resolve in the nun, and that's what he sees and that's what he calls her. And so they go to her house, her convent, and she says, "Come, and I will sort this out." She goes, and in a second, Effie walks out with her. But and the idea is to come and stay where Amaryllis is staying, but she's in a convent which she can. Everybody has left, and but she's not supposed to leave it. If she leaves it, then somebody else will come in and well, I mean, the diocese will come in and take it over, and that's what happens because she steps out to Effie's place, and then Carl and Shasta put them up with Darcy. So in the second part of last chapter that we read, uh, what happens is that oh, I didn't actually tell you that Shaska's father. Shaska doesn't have a mother. Shaska's father finds out that she is doing this with Carl, and he gets very angry, and tells her that you can't do this. And Carl, you know. Uh, misses her, and he goes around looking in different schools to find her. And it had just so happens that he actually ends up bumping into her in a school. And so she tells him she'll come that day, and she goes again on that one particular evening, and which I just told you about. And Shaska's father is very upset about that, and we also came across, what happens is that Carl is fired by the bookstore. So Sabine Gruber, who now runs a bookstore, fires him. And then what Carl is now, for the last few times, what he's been doing is selling his own books so that he can buy books to take to customers. So his own bookshelves are getting khali, and that's what how he's been managing. So now in the last part of the last chapter, what we find is that Shaska's father confronts him in an alley, and the last and he was actually carrying a book for a friend of Shaska's, uh, which is another story in itself. But so Karl basically gives that book to Shaska's father. Shaska's father thinks he's trying to push him, and he hits him, and Karl falls to the ground. So that's how the last chapter ended. So that's a long recap. Okay, so let's start now reading now. Chapter is called Journey to the End of the Night. Sometimes on his round, particularly in summer, when the heat made the cobbles shimmer and he could get thirsty just from breathing, Karl would suck on small pebbles. They had to be round to nestle neatly into his tongue, and large enough to prevent him swallowing them by accident, the kind that were ideal for skimming across the surface of a lake 8 times at least. Has anybody tried to do this? Yes, Samar.
Yes, sir.
Ah, you raised your hand. Abhimanyu, if you not want to say something, just put your hand down. Uh, so, has anybody so you've tried to do this, right, Samar? You said throw stones across still water or moving water. Samar, was that answer? Tried to do this? You're in mute, Samar. Okay, anybody who's tried to do this? Throw stones across flat water. If I remember right,
Yes,
when you
sir.
were
I
in
have
school,
tried it.
Yes, sir.
you tried?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so tell me, what type of stones are easy to throw across the water?
So the stones which are
Stones that are
small in size and light in weight.
just a little louder. Somehow I'm not able to hear.
So stones which are small in size and light in weight.
Light in weight, but shouldn't they be flat or should they be round like what the author has
So
described?
flat.
Ah, but I've also done this as a kid many times, right? And I think
Yes,
it was
sir.
there was an expression called dulls and playing ducks and drakes. And it's interesting when you bend down and you sort of throw that stone and it bounces on the water, but the stones have to be flat. That was my experience. So here the author is saying round, so I've never tried. I think it'll sink, right? So okay. So Carl found them on gravel drives and would rinse them thoroughly before use in the only drinking fountain in the city. Drinking fountain is where people can drink the water from. So and this is becoming more and more popular in in Germany especially, where people can drink water from a fountain. Uh, in India, unfortunately, you can't drink tap water, right? Most places, but in many countries in the West, even I've seen in Asia and other countries in Asia, you can easily drink water from a tap, right? They were amazed him each time. After all, they were only stones. Then again, mineral water brands all tasted different too, right? Does water taste? You have water taste? I mean, you have a taste normally when you think of water. Normally, you think it has a taste. Hmm? What do you think? Does water have a taste?
No, sir. No, sir.
No taste is also taste, no? You think no taste is no taste, right? So, but the author says different mineral water bottles have mineral water brands have different tastes, right? Because different minerals may be put with their own taste, right? Sometimes you drink water in somebody else's house, it tastes a little different. Sometimes you go to a restaurant, the water tastes a little different. Haven't you noticed that? I find it happens quite a lot, you know. So I think water does have a taste. But anyway, you let's
Yes,
carry on.
sir. I also think water also
Manisha, just unmute Aditya Yadav. And somebody else is also wanting to be unmuted. Earlier.
Yes, sir. I think water also has the taste.
Yeah, no, I heard you. I agree. I agree. The pebble in Carl's mouth right now tasted bitter. His palate felt decidedly dull. Moving his tongue to push it inside, Carl found nothing but empty space. The stone had vanished. Had he swallowed it? Maybe he'd stumbled. But he wasn't walking, was he? He could hear a beeping sound. Why was there a truck reversing? Should he get out of the way? Carl opened his eyes. Two walls of the room were painted a pastel yellow, while the rest of the room was white. White, clean surfaces everywhere. Next to him, a device was beeping with reassuring regularity. The other bed in the room was empty, covered with a layer of what looked like plastic wrap, like a bread roll delivered by a catering service. Sadly, nothing about the room said party. So, where do you think Carl is? Where do you think Carl is? Where could he be? way the room is, certainly not done up in a way that suggests there's a party happening, right? As the author said. Where do you think Carl is? Okay, let's read ahead. We'll find out. As Carl attempted to prop himself up, he realized his right arm was encased in plaster, as was his left leg. His head throbbed, possibly with the effort of processing the information. There appeared to be a door leading to a corridor and another leading to a bathroom. A TV, unplugged and dark, hung in one corner. Carl lay contemplating all this for a while. Then he fumbled for the wheeled bedside unit and managed to open the drawer where he found a remote control and a Bible, the Luther translation. So, Martin Luther is the person who translated the Bible into German, and that's a very famous translation of the Bible in German. Let me ask you a question. Which language was the Bible written in? Which language was the Bible written in? Anybody? Which language was the Bible written?
Sir, Greek.
Yes, part of it is in Greek, not in Latin. Part of it is in Greek, but it was
Sir,
in Hebrew and Aramaic, which was the language of the Middle East region, right? And part of it is in
Sir,
Koine
it
Greek,
is
which is the
Bible
earlier
Arabic.
form of Greek, right?
Sir, it is written in Bible Arabic.
This is louder, Summer.
Sir, it is written in Bible Arabic.
Yeah, Hebrew and Aramaic, and partly in Koine
Yeah,
Greek.
sir, there are three languages
Yeah,
are included
Koine Greek.
in.
Koine Greek is the earlier form of Greek. Like even English, there's a distinct uh, English which is of old times when it was when English came into being, and then middle, and then the modern English. So languages, as you know, also transition. He'd been trying to give someone a book. Memory flooded back. Shaska's father would surely turn up soon to apologize, and Shaska would bring him a book, hopefully one that hadn't been translated by Luther. The door to the corridor opened, and a nurse in green uniform entered. When she saw Carl's eyes were open, she smiled. Good to see you awake, Mr. Kollhoff. I'm Sister Tanya. How do you know my name? It's on your ID card in your wallet. He pointed to Carl's olive green jacket hanging on the wardrobe door. Besides, I know you from the bookshop. You introduced me to Harry Potter, and it was thanks to her enthusiasm for the boy wizard that she'd met her first boyfriend. She continued to chatter. The boyfriend had sadly proved to be an idiot. Miss Harry Potter, on the other hand, had stayed with her to this day. What happened? Asked Carl. You had a fall. You have a minor break in your arm and sadly a more major one in your leg. Besides that, concussion had you spark out for a few hours. Don't be hard on yourself. At your age, it's easy to take a tumble. But I didn't, Carl began, then broke off. If he told her what had really happened, Shaska's father would be arrested. He might even lose his job. How did I get here? Now, there's an odd tale, the nurse grinned. Well, not the part where the ambulance brought you to us, but the part before that, how you were found. Why? How did it happen? Head up, she plumped his pillow. Plumping means just flattening out a pillow. Right? A woman living in William Tell Gasse. thought she heard a dog barking like crazy and came out into the street to see what was going on. She found you lying there, but there was no dog with you. It was a cat, said Carl. Tears pricked his eyes again. It seemed that now he'd relearned the art of crying. He'd never be rid of it again. So this is a big change that's happened in Carl. He earlier on in the book, he said that he hadn't cried ever since he'd been a child, and and this is really the change that's taking place in Carl with his with his relationship with Shaska, right? Where from being totally on his own and being very happy being on his own, right? He's now he has uh, developed a friend Shaska, and he's also developed friendship with all his customers. Earlier, it was a very you know it was a very business-like dialogue with his customers, but now since the last few times he's basically been trying to help them, and so he's got more involved in their life, they've got more involved in his. And earlier in the last chapter we also read about how Darcy told him, no, we know each other for so long, we don't have to be formal with each other, we should be informal and call each other by our first name. So he's you can see the change that's taking place uh, in Karl because of the relationship with Shaska. How did you know that? It reminded me of a good friend, he replied, one who likes me for more than the food. So the background to this is that dog is actually a cat, right? And he calls it dog because it reminds him of a dog, right? And it has a very peculiar bark, and he used to give dog, some sort of supposed to use cat. I mean, it's a cat, right? But to accompany him on his round, certain parts of his round, and once or twice he didn't have anything, and the cat stopped appearing, and you know, he thought that he dog is not coming now because he's not carrying the sweet. But then dog reappeared again, and that's the context in which he's saying that one who likes me for more than the food. The nurse shook her head, deciding to attribute his response to the concussion. Right? You all know what a concussion is? You know what a concussion is? What's a concussion? Okay, you get hit on the head and you blank out, right? If you watch cricket, you may have seen now when somebody gets hit on the helmet, uh,
Then
they
may I tell
stop the
what
game.
does concussion mean?
Say that again.
Then may I tell what does concussion mean?
Yeah, yeah. So,
Sir,
Sir, concussion mean
it's a type of brain injury.
yes, yes. So that's why if you see in a cricket match, when the batsman gets hit on the helmet, somebody comes out, they actually ask him a question, what's your name? Can you see? All these type of questions they ask him before they carry on again. And they also, mostly will change the helmet as well. Because it could be, concussion is one of the issues that can happen, the head injury.
Sir, it forces the brain to move rapidly back and the fourth side in the skull. Fourth inside the skull.
Yep, yep. Okay. So Carl sent silent thanks to the window to dog, whose enduring schizophrenia had undoubtedly saved him. What is schizophrenia? Schizophrenia is having multiple personalities. It's a disease, right? A mental disease, right? So it's a cat and behaves like a dog, so that's why he's saying that uh, schizophrenia. And what is endearing? What is endearing? Something that, or somebody that evokes compassion, love, feeling of those type of feelings, right? Love largely. When he woke for the second time, everything looked exactly the same, but the evening had become a morning. Carl could feel his legs waiting to get going. They may not exactly have been racehorses champing at the bit, but years of habit were urging him to get away on their round. Carl looked about for his old shoes, so perfectly broken in. He could feel every unevenness in the road surface through his through their soles. Even with his eyes closed, he knew exactly where he was. Racehorses champing at the bit, right? So uh, the bit is the part of the bridle that is there in the horse's mouth, and the racehorses are eager to get going, right? So they're basically fighting on the bit. Very good question. So similarly, because Carl is eager to get back to his normal life of delivering books, he doesn't really actually currently realize, what his situation is. They lay in the far corner of the room, wrapped in a plastic bag. He just need a little help putting them. Once they were on his feet, everything else would happen of its own accord. Carl did his round in his head. Everyone asked where he'd been, and he responded that was nothing to worry about. He just had a minor accident. The door opened, startling him. Another nurse wearing the same green. Hello, Mr. Kollhoff. I'm Sister Ravenna. He propped himself up. Could you just help me with my shoes, please? Then I'll be out of your hair. She laughed. Tanya told me you had a funny sense of humor. I'm afraid we need to keep you here for a while longer yet. Carl tried to swing his plaster cast out of bed. The pain that shot through his leg felt as though he touched a live wire. He groaned. Anybody touched a live wire? Anybody touched a live
No,
wire?
sir.
No? Anybody who has touched a live wire? What does it feel like?
It
Anybody?
gives so the touch after touching the live wire, it gives us
Yes.
electric shock.
Right. So what does
Sir,
that
I
shock feel like?
touch live wire.
Yeah. What does it feel like?
सर बहुत गंदे तरीके से सर झंझना गया था हाथ.
हाँ 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 कुछ आपके थ्रू बॉडी के थ्रू कुछ एकदम चला निकलता है ना आपको फील होता है बॉडी के थ्रू कोई चीज जा रही है एकदम मुझे तो जो आराध्य ने कहा शॉक आपको ऐसे लगता है कि आप एक्चुअली और कभी कभी वो
They're
जो
like it sucks our blood, like we feel like that.
हाँ एंड समटाइम्स आई फेल्ट luckily it hasn't happened for a long time okay basically it's also basically you're attached to that and you're trying to pull yourself away that was also a feeling and that I mean obviously there are different levels right sometimes it's a little stronger sometimes it's a little uh, you know little weaker but so yeah that's a terrible feeling but I think in general my sense is that these days it happens less than it used to the old days. No moving. Rest up and get well. Head up. She plumped her pillow. Then I need you to tell everyone in the bookshop what's happened so they can tell anyone who asks after me. Sister Tanya already did that yesterday. She told them you were here and that it's nothing serious to make sure no one worries about it. His customers were sure to have asked at the bookshop and would soon come to visit him. So here is Carl, who was very happy in his own life and not no interaction with anybody, and now he is clearly looking for this interaction because he's rediscovered it inside. Do you have a book here? Any kind of book? The nurse pointed to the drawer and was about to say something when Carl interrupted her. Something not so heavy, maybe. I'll have to lift it with my left hand. Sorry, no, we don't have a patient library here. If you like, I can get you a magazine from the newsstand. Any chance they have Stevenson's Treasure Island or Karl May? What was good enough for Gustav was good enough for him. So Gustav was the earlier owner of the bookshop, and when he visited him in hospital, Karl was reading Treasure Island, and hopefully many of you have read Treasure Island. I think they've only got John Sinclair, Demon Hunter. Our senior consultant buys them all the time, and some Disney paperbacks for the kids. I'll take one, said Karl. It occurred to him he had no money. On second thoughts, don't bother. Shaska would be here soon. She'd have a book for him, or a calendar with puppies. And if she brought him another bookworm picture, he'd surely be allowed to pin it on the wall. But Shaska didn't come, nor did anyone else. Not that day, nor any of the days that followed. So why do you think that's happened? Why do you think no one's coming to see him? Any thoughts? Why is nobody coming to see him? What could be the reason? What could be the reason? What do you think? What could be the reason?
Summer, you raised your hand. You want to answer this question?
I want to know the question. I want to
Please be little loud. We cannot hear you.
Ma'am, can you please specify the question again? I can't understand.
Sir, are you able to hear him?
No, it's a little soft.
Ma'am, I want to specify the question. Like, I'm not getting the question.
Okay, you have not read the book, so you're not able to answer. No problem.
No, but you guess, no? If you're following the story, I mean, why do you think that,
Sir, I want to know the question.
you want
But
to
you
know the
want
question?
the question.
Question is, why Carl is, that has come to meet him. Ask him, why do you think nobody has come to meet him? Right? Carl is expecting people, he's in hospital, people to come and meet with him, right? But nobody has come to meet with him. Why do you think that's happening?
Sir, I don't know the exact answer, but I can give a guess. I think no one has came to meet Carl in the hospital because he does not have a good relations with his friends or family members. So no one cares about him. Might be the reason.
Okay, so I just shared the bits of the story which I think you were not there for. His relationship with his customers has changed a lot, right? He has a very good relationship with his customers. He is helping them. Darcy has just told him that we should be on first name terms. He has a very, very close relationship with Shaska. He is, went looking for her. She's, wanting to come and be with him. Her father didn't allow her for a few days. She was upset. So that's not correct. He has a few people in his life and they are fond of him. Okay, so let's read ahead. We just find out. Just nurses, care assistants, and doctors. His room became a stage where the same roles were played by a rolling cast of actors. The performances took place at regular times each day with small variations in the script. They helped me to eat, dress, wash, and urinate. It was fast, efficient, and occasionally a little less than gentle. They didn't come to see him, only to see to him. No one wanted to visit him. Okay. In the evenings, Karl would sometimes hear barking from the day center. He told himself it was dog missing him. Did no one wonder why he no longer came to their door? Were they all so indifferent to him? Those people whom he'd seen more than anyone else in the past few years. No one visited, right up to the day he was discharged. Karl hoped they would all be waiting at the entrance for him, although he knew they would not be. All the same, he pictured the scene in the bright colors Shaska loved to use, painting each detail in his mind, each of them smiling brightly. Standing alone in front of the hospital, nothing was familiar. His world didn't extend this far. He had no money for a taxi and too much pride to ask anyone in the hospital for some. He asked a passerby for directions to the Minster. Minster is a famous church or cathedral, and set off. Over 3 kilometers on crutches with frequent pauses, pains in his underarm, 3 small stumbles, and a few grazes, he was home. Closing the door of his top floor apartment behind him, all he could do was sink to the floor and fall asleep where he lay. Okay, so let's just stop here for a bit. This part that we've read is the chapter cobbles shimmering, right? So, has anybody seen road shimmer when it's hot? Can you recall? Or you feel as if there is water on the road ahead when the sun is streaming down. Anybody seen that? Anybody seen that?
So can you please repeat?
We came across the cobbles, which is part of the road, shimmering, right? And the beginning of this chapter. So my question is, have you seen when it's hot and you look ahead on a road, you see the road as if you feel as if there's water, you feel as if there is, some sort of light shimmering coming from the road. Have you seen that?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, anybody else has seen that? It happens fairly commonly. On a hot day, you see that a lot. Nobody has seen? That's surprising. Very surprising. But it normally happens because the the density of the air is different based on how hot it is, right? And that's what That's what ends up causing that illusion. We talked of the the language that the Bible was spoken in, Bible was written in, right? Uh, do you all know when Hindi came into being? हिंदी भाषा कब शुरू हुई? हिंदी भाषा की क्या हिस्ट्री है, जानता है?
No, sir. No, sir. No.
Anybody? What is the history of the Hindi language? When did it start? 13th century, when it started, right? The Hindi language. Okay. We came across Harry Potter. Manisha, can you just run the poll, please? So, Manisha, you're going to get a poll on your computers. Please just answer
Should
it on
I
your
stop the screen share, sir?
phone. No, you can just, it'll come up. You don't have to stop the screen share. Just put the poll on, it'll come.
1 minute, sir. Stop.
Okay, how many of you are familiar with Harry Potter?
सर मैंने देखा है बस।
देखिए किताब।
हम्म।
Okay.
Sir, I
Yours-
also see, but not the Harry Potter book and read.
Manisha ma'am, are you able to run the poll?
Sir, 1 minute, sir.
So on your screen, you will get a poll. You have to just answer the question, please.
One minute, but someone was here.
Okay, while Manisha ma'am is trying to do that, we came across what happened when Carl came out of the hospital now. He had, he's on crutches, right? And he's planning to walk to his house, which is 3 kilometers away. But it said that he had too much pride to ask for money from anybody in the hospital to take a taxi or something, right? So, what do you think about that? What do you think? Should he have asked somebody, or is it okay to go home on his own on crutches? What do you think? Okay, this is the poll.
It came?
Yes. But I can't answer it.
Okay, but I can see children answering.
Okay,
I'll-
great then. Great then. Something is wrong with my says hosts and panelists cannot vote. So that's okay. As long as other people are doing it. Okay. Okay.
I'll share the results.
Yeah. I'm just curious. So
Everyone done?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
okay, so let's get back to the question. Carl is going out of hospital. He has to walk. He has to go on crutches for 3 kilometers. He's not asking for help. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? What would you do?
Sir, can you repeat question?
So Carl is just got discharged from hospital. He cannot walk properly. He is on crutches. He has to walk for 3 kilometers to get to his house. But he He does not ask anybody for any help. He doesn't have any money, but he can ask somebody for some help so that he can take a taxi home. So is that a good thing or a bad thing Carl did? What did you think? What would you do if
That
you were in this
that
situation?
is a bad thing.
So you would have asked somebody for help. Anybody else
Sir, we can ask for help.
can ask for help. So why is Carl not asking for help, you think? Right? Because basically all his life, I mean, not all his life, the last several years, he has lived a very sheltered life and a life basically on his own, right? And so you're he's less inclined to ask for help in that sort of mental frame of mind. Yes, last few months possibly he has made some friends and he's very upset that they've not come to see him, but he's not, in the habit of asking for help. So, but my belief is that you should ask for help rather than subject yourself to. And he fell, and obviously that's why he had those grazes. So yes, Manisha, do we have a result?
So I'm not able to share the result on the webinar itself, but I've shared it on the WhatsApp.
Okay. So
Okay, if
tell
you
us,
want
what
to,
does it say?
yeah, just 1 minute. So poll come. Okay. 13%, 13 out of 22 says that I'm familiar with Harry Potter, but have not read any book of Harry Potter. 5% says I have read Harry Potter books, and another five says I'm not familiar.
Okay. 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 So I was just curious. Okay. Let's get back to the book. We have just a few minutes. I can see Brinda ma'am is around.
Should I end the poll?
Yeah, yeah. The clothesline ran along the walls like a mountaineer's safety rope. Karl had stretched it taut across shelves and cupboards, knotting it tightly to window handles and radiators. Next, he had turned his attention to the bookshelves. He could no longer bear their emptiness, so he drew book spines on the inner surface of the bookcases with felt tip pen. He knew exactly where all his favorites had stood. In the rare places where he had forgotten a title, he wrote that of some important work he should have read long ago. Works by the Marquis de Sade and Giacomo Casanova appeared in his bedroom, but only to confront those masters of erotic literature with miserable reality of his own bed frame. The titles of all these remarkable books only made him more acutely aware of the treasures he had lost. Right? I mentioned to you that he sort of sold his books so that he could deliver books to his customers. And without books, the acoustics in his apartment were completely wrong. It echoed like a crypt. He stopped speaking aloud. Right? So the room is empty. So you may have noticed when a room is empty, uh, it's not easy to hear, and sound is coming back and echoes are coming, right? Like if you noticed in a tunnel, it's always fun to blow the horn, right? Because the horn then echoes back. And a crypt is an underground room. He no longer went out of doors. He had a few jars of Prevost gherkins, mandarins, half pears in light syrup, and mild sauerkraut. Right. So Prevost is a region, and so it's obviously a brand also of gherkins. Gherkins are pickled cucumbers. Mandarins are small oranges. Pears are pears. Right. Sauerkraut is pickled cabbage. He ate very little. He was rarely hungry. When are you not hungry? Can you tell me? भूख कब नहीं लगती आपको? When are you not hungry?
So when we are excited for something that's new for us, or we used to very enjoy it, type of thing.
Okay. When else are we not hungry?
सर हम तब हमें तब भूख नहीं लगती जब हम फोन देख रहे हैं या फिर हमारे
Sir,
कुछ
सर या
sir,
फिर हम कुछ कर रहे हो
first
तभी
we
चीज आ
are
हमें
रही
भूख
not
नहीं
है।
Sir,
लगती।
hungry.
when we are doing an important work, so we cannot.
सर जब हम कुछ काम कर रहे होते हैं या फिर फोन देख रहे होते हैं तब हमें भूख नहीं लगती।
फोन देख रहे होते हैं तो भूख
Sir,
नहीं
in
लगती.
today's world,
Okay.
when we are working in phone or we are excited for something or we are busy in something, we are not hungry or we don't want food.
Right.
Sir,
Right.
I feel like I'm not hungry whenever I'm really sick or when I'm not feeling well.
Right. That also happens a
And
lot.
sir, when we playing, we
When we
not
are
feel
doing something or
hungry.
playing.
Yeah. When you're playing, when you're busy, when you're emotionally, So yeah, hunger is related to how, how you're feeling, your emotional state, your health. Yes, hunger is related to that. So Carl is not hungry now because he is emotionally very stressed, and he's stressed because nobody is coming to see him, and he's really feeling lonely. Every day he ate a little less. He had decided to accelerate his disappearance to the point where his body would come to the conclusion that it was no longer worth waking up in the morning. Carl did not fear death and never had. The village where he was born and raised had just sat outside the city gates and had supplied violets to the cemeteries. Right? Violets are flowers, cemeteries are where people get buried. Right? Death had been a close companion from his earliest youth, even if it had bloomed in bright colors. Right? So Carl said he was not afraid of death. Right? So tell me what you're afraid of. What what scares you? Anybody? What scares you? What are you afraid of? Anybody? What are you afraid of? Right? At the beginning of the session, Manisha ma'am was asking what you like about these sessions, and you said that you're not afraid of speaking, right? Because it felt that you could talk. So tell us, what are you afraid of?
Sir, I have fear of public speaking or
Fear
speaking
of
on stage. Public speaking or speaking on stage.
public speaking, yes, that's very common, very common. Can be overcome, and I know Summer, you can. I hope your singing is making progress. I'm actually the opposite of Carl. I'm really afraid of death. Yes, that's absolutely normal as well. Right. What else? So I'll tell you, my back, I have a bad back currently, but the doc said walking is good. So the last few days when I've been walking, I'm terrified of hitting a stone or something because, I mean, it'll really hurt because if I hit myself, I hit my foot on something, it hurts. So, it is just ingrained in me while I was walking last evening. Darkness, yes. I'm afraid of heights, right? I couldn't get to the top of the Eiffel Tower because you know
Sir, I am afraid of speaking in front of others.
yes, again happens quite it's quite normal. These are
I'm afraid of height.
okay. So one question then I have is how do we overcome our fears? How do we overcome them?
Sir,
So
we can
like I
practice.
have
By
a fear of
practicing that thing.
Yes. What else?
so like I have fear of public speaking. So when I will be on stage speaking something in front of others, I will be more courageous in that field.
Yeah. As Talib said, I mean, you have to practice it, right? And if you practice, you'll overcome that fear. It's about
Yes, sir.
confronting your fears. So we all have things which we're afraid of. So I can tell you, I live on the 12th floor. When I first came into my house, I was afraid to look out of the balcony. Okay, it seemed I was very afraid, but I'm not now. I've got used to it, right? But if I go much higher, even the 25th floor or something in our building, I'm okay now. But there at certain heights, I still feel scared. So you get used to it, right? So I mean, because I had time, right, and I was by myself. I was standing back from the balcony, but I just put my hand out and put it on the railing, and that gave me a lot of comfort. I'm not going to fall, right? And then I sort of moved a few steps ahead, and I looked down, and it became okay. So yeah, it's about confronting your fears and practice, as Salat said. And death is a different one, Myra. We talk about it some other time. Maybe we talk about it when Amardeep is here next, which will be on the 30th. So I'm going to stop here with 11:33. Brinda, sorry, I couldn't swap the time today because I
Absolutely all right. No
decided
issues.
whether to go to Varanasi or not because of my back, and
Oh,
I'm still a little undecided, but I'm going to make that call in the next few minutes. So let me
right.
I just want to do that. And so,
Great.
I was just thinking next Sunday, Manisha, I'm not there. And it'll be like, I don't remember the last time I was not there, at least for a couple of years, I think. I don't know. But it's going to be a difficult Sunday, but I'll be on a flight, so I think it'll be okay. So, okay.
I can help out, Manisha. Next Sunday is not a problem. Yeah. Next Sunday is
Okay.
what date?
It's the
2nd of November.
2nd of November.
Second. Okay, I'm good with that because 9th I'm traveling.
I'll
Okay,
put that
so
in the
thank you
calendar.
all.
Yeah, please. So
Over
next
to
Sunday I
you.
can take. Yeah. Thank you, Juji.
Over to you, Brinda ma'am.
And,
I'm going to
and
take off now.
be safe with your back.
Yes.
I don't know whether you believe in homeopathy, but there's a wonderful medicine which you could, I'm sure you're on medication already, but
Yeah.
Magfos helps with a little hot water 3 to 4 times a day.
Just say that again. Which one?
Magfos,
Magfos. Okay.
Phos, 6x. It's a
Okay.
biochemic medicine, so that
Yeah.
really helps with the back pain.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Have a
Over
good
to
trip
you.
if you do go.
Bye.
Bye.
Should I
Manisha,
screen share?
yeah, please. We have not read the book for quite a few weeks. I've come back after 3 weeks, I think. So,
Is my screen visible to you, ma'am?
yes, it is. Right. Okay, so we're going to have this chapter called Hey, Mr. Sandman. I think there's a famous song. I don't know, you children may not have heard it because you're too young, but there used to be a very beautiful song called Hey, Mr. Sandman. Anyway, let's carry on and see what we have in this chapter of Hey, Mr. Sandman. A real summer for me includes swifts. They are like swallows, but much bigger and much, much faster. So the word swift over here, swifts are birds, and he describes them as being like swallows, but bigger and faster. Uttering their piercing calls, they race between tall city buildings, hunting for insects or just for fun. Unlike many other birds, swifts spend almost their whole lives in the air. They are so extremely adapted to life above the earth that their legs have atrophied and their tiny feet are good only for clinging on to things. Of course, they also need to breed, and their nests, which they build in cliffs or in cracks in walls, are constructed so they can fly in and out of them with ease. Apart from the time they spend sitting on nests, the birds satisfy all their other requirements on the wing. Even mating often takes place high up in the air, where swifts like us abandon themselves to the moment. And having a male clinging to the female's back does nothing for the bird's flying prowess. So mating pairs often end up spiraling down at breakneck speed and have to separate in time to avoid being smashed to smithereens. But I wanted to introduce you to the swift to illustrate another bodily function, and that is sleep. Most life forms, even trees, need to sleep. And birds land in a sheltered place to do so. Our chickens, for example, take themselves back to the hen house at dusk like good little chickens, tramp up the ramp and settle on their perch, where they snuggle up side by side. They don't have to worry about falling off because, as with most birds, their tendons shorten when they sit and their toes curl automatically. This means our chickens can hold on tight without expending any energy. Like all birds, chickens dream. When they do, there's a danger they might move around just as we do, as their nightly movies play. But if they were to move, they might fall from the perch or for birds living in the wild out of their tree. And that's why the muscles used for movement are deactivated the moment a bird nods off, so it can spend the night peacefully with its head tucked underneath its wing. What's a perch? Do you know? What is a perch? Can anyone tell me? It says over here that they climb onto their perch and they snuggle side by side on the perch, and their toes curl automatically and hold on tightly to the perch so that they might not fall. So now you can guess what a perch is. Any answers? Are we there? Manisha ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
They don't seem to be responding today.
Ma'am, can I?
Yes, tell me. Yes, Talat.
To sit or be put on the edge of something.
Okay, so to perch as a verb means to sit, but as a noun it would mean, yes, I've
Ma'am,
got the answer from Rishona. It's
Ma'am,
a branch or a
Ma'am,
rod where
in noun it will be a branch
yes,
or a
branch.
barring cage.
Absolutely. So it's a place on which the birds would sit. Okay, good. So let's move on. Now look at this, the imagination of the author. He's talking about how birds, when they sleep, they dream. And he calls these dreams nightly movies, right? And nothing disturbs them because the rest of the body, the muscles and other organs of the body are deactivated, much like it happens to us also when we sleep deeply. And what about swifts? They never perch and they spend not a second longer than they have to on the ground or on the nest. If they want to sleep, they do so while airborne. Imagine, while they're flying, while they're airborne, they sleep if they have to. Otherwise, they don't. That is highly risky, of course, because sleeping birds aren't in total control of their actions. And so they spiral upwards a couple of kilometers to increase the distance between themselves and the ground. Then they begin to glide downwards, tracing a wide circle that slows their descent. They don't have time for anything more because they need to be wide awake again before The first rooftops loom dangerously close and their situation becomes precarious. Is this brief shut eye sufficient for the birds to get any rest? Definitely. Because although sleep allows all species to exclude or reduce outside influences so that the brain can run its internal processes undisturbed, sleep is a little different for every species. The different phases of our sleep with their varied depths show that even human sleep is not a uniform affair. And our horses, for example, don't need much in the way of really deep sleep. Often just a few minutes are enough, which they take while lying down on their sides, looking as though they've been shot. They're so deep in dreamland that they are indeed dead to the world, and their legs twitch as though they were galloping over an imaginary prairie. Other than that, they stay on their feet and doze away a few hours of each day, just like the airborne swifts. In fact, there's a common belief that if horses are lying down, they must be rather sick, right? Or they don't have life in them. It's obvious that, like us, animals sleep. Even tiny fruit flies need to sleep, and when they're asleep, they twitch their legs just like horses. The really exciting question is how they sleep and what do they dream about. Our nightly mental excursions take place during the so-called REM phase of sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. In this phase, our eyes move under our eyelids, and if you wake a person in REM sleep, they can almost always remember what they were dreaming about. Many species of animals experience similar nightly eye movements, and the larger their brains in relationship to their body size, the more they have. Because animals can't talk to us, we have to look for other clues to understand what's going on inside their heads. Researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Boston looked at rats. They measured the rats' brain waves while they were in a maze busily searching for food. Then they compared these readings with instrument displays while the rodents were sleeping. The similarities were so clear that using the data they had gathered, the researchers could even tell where in the labyrinth the sleeping rats were in their dream. Imagine. So what's a labyrinth? Does anyone know what a labyrinth is? Yes, there's a hand up. Rajesh, are you going to answer or have you just put up an emoji? What's a labyrinth? How many of you have been to a bhool bhulaiya? A labyrinth is like a bhool bhulaiya. It's a maze, M-A-Z-E, maze, right? It's something where there are many paths and you have to find your way out, but it's very difficult to do so because it's very confusing. It's intertwined in such a way that one path will lead to another and to another and so on and so forth. Experiments with cats in 1967 also yielded evidence for dreaming, although in this case the evidence was indirect. The scientist Michel Jouet from the University of Lyon stopped cats from relaxing their muscles while they slept. Normally, the body, including the human body, shuts off voluntary muscle movement to prevent us from thrashing about wildly in our dreams or walking around our bedrooms with our eyes closed. This shut-off mechanism is only necessary in dreams sleep. When the mechanism is deactivated, you can observe what the test subject is experiencing in its dreams. You have observed cats in this state arching their backs, hissing, or running around, all while in deep sleep. Science accepts this as proof that cats dream. But what does it look like if we distance ourselves from our branch of the animal kingdom, leave the mammals and consider insects instead? Could something similar play out inside such tiny heads? Can the relatively small number of cells in a fly's brain also produce pictures during sleep? Today, there are indeed indicators that these tiny clumps of cells can do more than we ever gave them credit for. As I just mentioned, fruit flies twitch their legs just before they fall asleep, and their brain is particularly active while they are sleeping. Another parallel with mammals. Does this mean that fruit flies dream? Their physical reactions suggest that they do. But so far, we can only guess what images might be lighting up inside their little heads. Pictures of mushy fruit, perhaps? So that's our imagination. Okay, so we finished one chapter that was a short chapter on sleep. Let's see what he talks about oracles. Now, you know, when you were not even born, many years ago, there used to be, like, you have Batman and you have your Pokemon and things like that. There used to be a toy which boys played with, and he was called He-Man. And there's a whole set of other things that came with the He-Man, and one of them was called Oracle. What is Oracle, or who is Oracle? Do you all know what is Oracle? Has anyone ever read anything about an oracle? Who's an oracle, or what is an oracle? No one? Try, guess. Rishona, do you know what an oracle is? Oh yeah, Rishona is up with an answer. It often refers to someone who's I can't read the whole chat. I'll have to open the chat. Just a minute. Who's a prophet, okay? It's like the voice of a prophet or the voice of God almost, okay? So that's what an oracle means, right? Okay, let me get out of this. Yeah. So I have to admit, I always used to be a bit skeptical when there was talk of animals having a sixth sense.
Ma'am,
Oh,
an oracle is that in the ancient Greek,
hmm.
a place where people could go to ask the gods for advice and information about the future. The
Yeah,
priests
so
whom the gods were taught to give their message.
absolutely. They would go to a certain place, but there would be a voice which would be heard, right? That voice is the voice of the oracle or the oracle, right? So I have to admit, I always used to be a bit skeptical. Skeptical is one who doesn't believe in it, okay? Or we are not very sure that this is right. When there was talk of animals having a sixth sense. Okay, so in many species, individual senses are more pronounced than ours. More pronounced here means stronger. Individual senses are stronger in many species than they are in us. But they can really be so much more pronounced that they can pick up almost imperceptible clues, to impending natural catastrophes. Imperceptible means something that you cannot feel or know of. And impending is something that is going to come upon you. You can't stop it. So this sentence means that they really be so much more pronounced that they can pick up almost imperceptible clues to impending natural catastrophes. Let me give you an example. Before an earthquake, sometimes dogs or birds can sense it. And the dogs do give us an indication that some natural disaster is going to happen. and they make funny noises or they try to hide. And this tells us that, okay, something is the matter, something is going to happen. And because they cannot speak, they do it in their actions, but we don't know because we can't read those actions clearly. So they do have a sense of sensing impending natural catastrophes. Today, I believe that this sixth sense is a necessary tool for survival in the wild, a tool that has not been completely lost in the artificial surroundings of our modern world, but which certainly has been buried. The word buried is the clue here, for who would want to be buried alive in a volcanic eruption, for example? Goats, it seems, are particularly afraid of this eventuality, or so you might think, given their ability to detect volcanic activity. A researcher at the Max Planck Institute, Martin Wickelski, discovered this by tracking the goats. After he fitted a herd of goats on the Sicilian volcano Mount Etna with GPS transmitters, he noticed there were several times when the herd suddenly became restless as though a dog were harassing them. The animals ran back and forth and tried to hide under bushes or behind trees. Each time, a few hours later, there was a sizable volcanic eruption. The herd gave no noticeable early warning signals for minor eruptions. And indeed, why should they bother? How were the goats aware of what was about to happen? Unfortunately, researchers don't yet have a satisfactory answer to that question, although they believe it has something to do with the gases seeping up out of the ground just before an eruption. So that's a possible explanation. Animals in German forests are aware of similar dangers. Volcanic activity is an issue everywhere in Central Europe, and you can see signs of it in the Eifel, where I live. Ancient volcanoes tower over the landscape, interspersed with a few young ones, like the one that formed Lark Lake. Young in this context means that the last time the volcano erupted was 13,000 years ago, and it could do so again at any time. Back then, it spewed 16 cubic kilometers of debris and ash up into the air, shook Stone Age settlements, and formed dust clouds that obscured the sun as far away as Sweden. So it's a danger to be taken seriously, even if there is only a slim chance that we will experience an eruption in our lifetime. Where I live, wood ants are the focus for researchers, or I should say, for some researchers. Professor Ulrich Skriber from the University of Duisburg, Essen, and his team went to incredible effort to map more than 3,000 anthills in the Eifel. They discovered a striking correlation between the placement of the anthills and the faults in the Earth's crust caused by volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. At the intersections of these lines of disturbance, they found concentrations of anthills. The composition of the gas seeping out of the ground in these places was distinctly different from what constituted the surrounding air. The redwood ants love the mix and prefer to build their homes at these junctions. Now that I'm aware of this, I think of it every time I'm out in the woods and see these attractive formations full of scurrying ants. Scientists don't have the answer to the goat riddle yet, and neither do they know why the ants like these places. The one thing that is clear is that the ants can smell the tiny differences in the concentration of gases, just as the goats can. And there are numerous reports from all over the world about similar phenomena. Does this mean animals are inherently more sensitive to their surroundings than people? Naturally, there are many species that perform considerably better in individual sense categories. Eagles see better, dogs hear and smell better than we do. However, the sum total of our senses is so good that on average we are no different from other species. So why is it that in comparison with animals we are so unaware of changes in our environment? Any guesses? Why is it in comparison with animals we are so unaware of changes in our environment? We are not sensitive like the animals and the birds and the insects are. What could be a possible reason? Before we read the reason given by the author, can anyone guess what could be the possible reason? I think in one of my sessions, I did speak about dogs losing their natural power of sense. Yes, Myra, what are you saying? Because animals are more connected to, okay, let me open chat.
To the nature.
To the nature. All right. So, okay, but in what way? And why are we not?
Ma'am, I feel like animals are more connected to the nature because for animals, nature is their home and they are taking from the nature and also giving it back. But
Hmm.
for us, for human, we're just constantly taking from the nature and not respecting it as much.
Okay. Also, any other reason? Think of, those who have dogs as pets. Do they live like dogs which don't live in your houses and which are in the open in nature? What's the difference and why the difference? What happens in colder places where dogs are not domesticated and they're living on their own in the wild areas? What happens to them? How do they bear the cold?
Sir, ma'am, they live on their own. They don't want any help from us. They
Yes,
are self-dependent.
because their bodies are tuned and their bodies have mechanisms which can make them bear the cold. But what do we think? We think that dogs like us also need to wear warm clothes. So we make special jackets for our dogs to keep them warm. We give
Yes,
them
ma'am.
blankets and so on and so forth. So what does it do? It interferes with their natural instincts, and slowly and steadily over time, they lose that ability to put up with the cold in a natural way. Similarly, we people surround ourselves with so many gadgets, so our bodies lose the natural instinct of being able to live in nature without using all this. If it is very hot, we have an AC on. If it is cold, we have the heater on. If it's raining, we know what to do, right? But look at some of those sadhus who survive in icy cold regions without any blankets or heaters or anything. That's because their bodies have got accustomed to it and their natural instincts take their place. Nowadays, most dogs are supposed to be leading us out of danger, showing us our way out. Unfortunately, by keeping them at home and surrounding them with, unnatural scents, dogs also go to spas like us. So they lose their natural instinct of smelling things and they can't find their way home back, and they get lost. So this is what we've done to them, right? So we need to think about it, right? So let's see what the author has to say. I believe the answer lies in the way our modern home and work environments overwhelm our senses. This is exactly what I was telling you. They take over our senses, they overwhelm us, and they destroy our natural senses. Most smells, for example, no longer come from woodlands or meadows, but from exhaust pipes, emissions from the office printer, or the perfumes and deodorants that we use on our body.
हाँ जी
Permanent sensory
कौन सा
over.
बढ़िया बताइए क्या आंसर
Somebody's mic is on.
कर लीजिए 8 1 में
Anisha ma'am, please keep your mic on mute. But from exhaust pipes, emissions from the office printer, or the perfumes and deodorants that we use on our bodies. Permanent sensory overload as a result of fabricated fragrances, masks, natural aromas. It is different out in the country only if you spend a lot of time out and about in nature. For instance, where I live, you can smell a single moped puffing and discharging exhaust from its stinky two-cylinder engine from 50 meters away. And when it rains, the forest air is immediately full of mushroomy smells that forecast a rich harvest in a few days. You see? So the power to smell naturally is overpowered by all the artificial smells that we are voluntarily and involuntarily surrounded by. Voluntarily, because we ourselves like, very strong deos and perfumes on our bodies. And we have to bear all the stinky smells that come from our surroundings. We have exhaust pipes which are not cleaned in the vehicles. So they not only let out smoke, but they also exude a terrible smell. And all this kills our natural ability to smell something which is good, fresh. Okay? It is similar when it comes to keen vision. Okay? What is vision? Sight, the ability to see. People who spend a lot of time sitting in front of a computer screen when they are young or surfing with smartphones are more likely to be short-sighted than children who spend most of their time outside. What is to be short-sighted? Any of you wearing spectacles? So if you have a short sight, what would that mean? That you cannot see. Yes, Samar?
Ma'am, I'm telling that if someone is wearing they don't have a good eyesight.
Yeah, but then what does short sight mean? You have short sight and long sight. Okay, so those who are short-sighted cannot read what is in the distance. So they have to wear spectacles for that. Right? So if you can't see what is written on the board in the classroom and you go to an eye doctor, he'll say that your eyes need spectacles for you to be able to see the board clearly. And that means that you're not able to see what is written at a distance clearly, and therefore you're short-sighted. Okay? But when you say that you're long-sighted, it means that you can probably read what is at a distance, but you cannot read what is written in a book which is placed very close to you. So a lot of people like me wear what is known as a bifocal lens. So we can read what is at a distance and what is close by also. Our eyes adjust to the lens. Recent studies show that short-sightedness has increased significantly in younger generations, with rates up to 4 times higher in people born in the 1960s compared with people born in the 1920s. Are we losing our distance vision? Luckily, we can put on glasses. However, the increasing deterioration of our natural acuity of vision seems to me symptomatic of something else. acuity of vision. What is acuity? Any guesses on acuity? Acuity means scarcity, lesser. Okay, why is our vision lesser? It seems to me symptomatic. Symptomatic meaning it is talking about symptoms or showing symptoms of some kind of a ability or disability. So let's see what he says now. I believe the senses we are born with are as attuned to natural processes as animal senses are. Okay, so we also have those kind of senses like animals have. But we, as I just said, and we just discussed, we have worked on destroying them. It is modern life that dulls one's senses of one sense after another. Even my ears aren't the best these days, as a few frequencies have fallen victim to disco visits in my youth or to shooting practice. But there is still hope. When something is gone organically, it cannot be repaired. However, our brain can compensate for many things. For me, one beautiful example is the annual migration of cranes. I can hear these birds from a long way off, even through windows well insulated for sound, because I'm always excited to hear these ambassadors of seasonal change. All it takes is a faint suggestion, more like a premonition, and I step outside and I see a V of birds flying in the distance. Let's look at these 2-3 sentences, children, because there are a lot of words which we need to visit. So one beautiful example is the annual migration of cranes. We all know that there are many species of birds which migrate annually, meaning every year they move from the place which has become very, very cold and uncomfortable to places which are warmer and more comfortable. We have a whole lot of birds which migrate and come to India because India, in many places in India, don't become as cold as the places which these birds belong to. So the author is talking about the migration of cranes, and he says that he gets very, very sensitive because his ears are waiting to hear the sound of the cranes flying. And every time they start coming in, his ears are so quick to pick up the sound of the cranes flying that even if he's in a room which has soundproof windows or glasses, he can still hear them. They're insulated for sound, meaning that sounds from outside cannot come in or sound from inside cannot go out. But when he hears these birds, or when the birds fly together as a flock of birds, a flock of cranes are flying in a V shape, he can hear them even if he is inside his insulated room. Okay? And he's so excited to see, or rather to hear these ambassadors of seasonal change. They're ambassadors. Ambassadors are people who carry messages, kind of a thing. Okay, so these cranes are ambassadors to show to the world that the season is changing. And he's so excited to see this. It's like a premonition. A premonition. Any guesses? Does anyone know what's a premonition? So, you know, a lot of us have this sense, oh, something very good is going to happen. But most of the time we feel, oh, something is going to happen. So I'm feeling so uneasy. Something bad is going to happen. Okay. When you have the sense that something is going to happen and it really happens, that sense of being aware of something happening in the future is called a premonition. Okay. So he says that all it takes is a faint suggestion, more like a premonition, and I step outside and see a V of birds. A V is the shape. How many of you have seen this? Have you seen gulls in the sky flying in a V shape? There's something, the shape has something to do with aerodynamics, from where many of our scientists got the inspiration, and that's how the aeroplane actually came into being. So children, if you don't know much about why the birds fly in that shape, I suggest you do a little bit of research and find out why do birds, certain flocks of birds fly in the shape of a V, and you'll come to know why, right? So now let's move on. Migrating cranes are closely tied to the subject of this chapter, the early warning system of animals. The birds are close to distant weather patterns because they like to fly with the wind at their backs. When they fly down from the north in autumn, it means bitterly cold north winds are blowing south, which might signal the first snows of the season. In spring, however, the mass arrival of cranes signals the start of the breeding season, meaning that warm southern breezes are drifting north from their winter quarters in Spain, and temperatures will soon be on the rise. You can even roughly estimate the current temperature by listening. That sounds bizarre, but it's actually quite simple. Grasshoppers and crickets are our little helpers here. These cold-blooded insects begin their concerts when the temperature reaches about 12 degrees Celsius. The higher the thermometer climbs, the faster they chirp. You could argue that a better way to tell the temperature would be by how hot the air feels on your skin. True, but when you're physically active, that's difficult because of the additional heat generated by your own body. Just as you can train your ears, so can you train your eyes. You can correct defective eyesight with glasses, but it is the brain's reaction that is even more important. And you can hone its ability to pick up on particular changes in the surroundings. Hone its ability. Hone means to sharpen, to make it better. So you can actually make things better by working on it. These days, my peripheral vision is to be able to see what is going on, not only in front of you, but in all the sides of your head. The slightest difference in color in spruce attacked by bark beetles catches my attention before clear differences appear between affected trees and the healthy crowns of neighboring ones. Other senses of mine have been trained as well. Whether I can feel a shift in the direction of the wind blowing on my face, signaling a change in the weather, or the small droplets of rain that announce light cloud cover and therefore no serious rain, or minuscule anomalies in the smell of the air that betray the presence of a rotting animal carcass in the distance. Together, these sensations are pieces of a puzzle that constantly update me on the current state of my surroundings and its dangers without me having to think too much about it. Okay? So we pick up all these signals from whatever is lying around us, and our brain gets to know, okay, there's danger here, there's stink here, or there's something that is lying here which I wouldn't want to go towards. Or it tells me, okay, if there's a carcass lying, obviously it tells me that some animal has been hunted and left over here. If you belong to that segment of the population that has a feel for the weather, you too could forecast a storm long before the first clouds appear in a bright blue sky. Scientists don't agree where this sensibility lies. For example, whether it has something to do with the changing conductivity of cell membranes, but whatever it is, it works. How much more accurately must early people have been able to read the woods and the meadows exposed as they were to all these stimuli day in and day out? In my case, I spend only part of the day training my senses like this. Animal train all their lives. No wonder they're so much better at predicting natural disasters. That's what I was telling you right at the beginning of the last chapter, also, that animals are so good at predicting a natural disaster because their natural abilities are still alive, intact, and have not been taken over. Now, a lot of us can train our minds to do so, and you children can certainly do that. So, I know of cooks who can smell the food and say that isme namak kam hai, right? Just by looking at food, some cooks can tell you that there is something the matter with this dish, right? So why is that possible? Because they have worked on their senses in such a way that it can happen. Sometimes we can smell the air and say, okay, I think that it's going to rain. We can smell the atmosphere and say, there's a storm that is brewing somewhere. Okay? So we all should do what the author says he's doing. Like we can spend a part of our time in the day training our senses like this. If animals are so sensitive, what about long-term forecasts? Can animals feel if the coming winter will be a hard one? Some years, you can see squirrels and jays burying particularly large quantities of acorns and beech nuts. I'm sorry to have to tell you that it would be wrong to conclude they are acting with wise foresight to tide themselves over a long and snowy winter. The animals are simply making the most of an overly abundant offering of food that the trees have put at their disposal. Beeches and oaks all bloom together every 3 to 5 years. This synchronous blooming often happens the spring after a very dry and difficult summer. The bountiful nuts and the squirrels and jays' diligent nut gathering happens later that year, which means that their activity attests to what the weather was rather than what it will be, which is a bit disappointing. So animals are not capable of forecasting the weather in the long term. However, the situation is quite different when we turn our attention to short-term changes. And my favorite species in this respect is the chaffinch. These birds like to live in old deciduous forests, but they also hang out in the mixed woodlands. There are the male trills, a pretty song with a rhythm that I remember learning in school, which goes something like chip, 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 chewy, chewy, chewy. But you can only hear this song in good weather. If dark clouds are massing, the first drops of rain might even be falling. Then what you hear is run, 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 sounded on a single note. I have noticed during my daily forest rounds that the chaffinch changes its song when it is disturbed, but it keeps singing its regular tune when it sees me. It clearly registers the sudden appearance of a person from behind the trees as less of a threat than the sudden disappearance of the sun behind the clouds. But what benefit do other chaffinches get when one alert bird notices a change in the weather and warns the others? Couldn't they just look up into the sky and see the storm front for themselves? Not if they are under the dense leafy canopy of an old beech forest. Here, the most they could notice is a slight darkening of the day. The only place to see the approaching menace is through a gap created when one of the giant trees fell and opened up a view of the sky or from way up in the crowns of the trees. Thus, the warnings are useful because not every finch is privy to this insight from where it is sitting. To be privy means to get a private look before anyone else. Ma'am, please go back to the last chapter. Yeah. So the warnings are useful because not every finch is privy. That means they do not have the privilege of this insight. Insight is something that we feel within our heads, something that only we feel, and we feel it much before anyone else can feel it, right? So one species of birds which stays in the forest of the beach, which is a thick forest, and the foliage of the trees cover the sun and the clouds. They cannot see that the clouds are telling them something, that the change in the pattern of the clouds or the sun hiding behind the clouds is giving them a message, because the clouds and the sun are hidden by the thick foliage of trees, right? So the warnings are felt only by some of the birds, depending on where they are, and not to all, right? So that's where this chapter ends, which tells us about how sensitive the vision and the smelling power of animals are, right? Manisha ma'am, we are at 12:23. Do we have time to start the next chapter, or shall we take in some questions from the children?
Ma'am, we can have some questions from the students and we can tell them what to write for the reflection.
Right. Okay. So can you go back to the last chapter, because I just want to focus on a few things, please. Children, any questions? Rather, anybody, any questions, any thoughts, any sharing you want to do? Have you had animals at home that you have noticed? Or have you been on nature trips and seen examples of what the author has written about and what he has talked about? And we read 2 chapters of this book just now. So do you have anything that you can relate to? Like I was telling you about dogs sensitizing us to disasters that are impending. So uh, does anyone have an example to give us? I know that there are many of you who have pets. I know that there are some of you, in whose houses there are rabbits or other things being bred. So if you have any instances, would you like to share that? That would be interesting, in fact. Do you have or have you seen, animals that wait for their masters, and before the person comes, they start getting very alert, wagging their tail, making certain sounds to show that they're excited? Does anyone have a pet who does that? Waits for you to come back? And before you are at home, your mother says, he signals, and I come to know that you're coming. No? I can tell you that it happens in our house. My son and daughter-in-law, they have a beautiful cat. And when they go out, and when any one of them is somewhere closer to the house, the cat starts meowing, letting me know that in a little while, one of them is going to be home, because they sense it. Right? So do you have examples like this? Meenakshi ma'am, do you have any pets?
I don't have a pet myself. My brother has a pet cat, and my uncle, I remember his dog, Caesar. What he used to do is when my uncle was, quite close to, not very close either, because it took another maybe 5 minutes to 7 minutes for him to reach home.
Right.
And he would be right at the window. He would sit and, he would be peeping out of the window very excitedly
Right.
that
Yes.
he's about to come in. So,
Ab-
yes, I've seen that happen. So, uh, I mean, and as far as the cat is concerned, she becomes a little shy when it doesn't matter who comes in. First, she
Yes.
withdraws and then she goes
Yeah,
forward.
they're not very people friendly. So when there are people in the house whom they don't really meet every day, they try to go and hide. right? So
Yeah.
you don't want to be in front of
So
others.
she loves my daughter, but even if my daughter comes in, immediately
Yeah.
her thing is she'll withdraw for a minute or two, and then
Yeah.
she'd come back.
So children, any more stories like that? I'm saying children because the adults have shared. So any one of you who wants to share an instance like this, do you have any dog or pet, pets who have behaved like this and stories of them being very sensitive? Because I have plenty, but I don't want to be the only one sharing. So I would like you all to participate and tell us if you have, and you can find out from your family members, you can talk to your friends, you can find out from your family members, and your reflections can tell us about it. You could write and tell us about such animals that you have seen, you have lived with, or you have heard from others who have lived with such animals, about how sensitive they are to what is going on around them. And sometimes there can be some very funny stories, like I have a friend who has always had generations of dogs and cats in her house, but the dogs and cats, they never believed that they were not friends. Normally cats and dogs are never supposed to be friends. But I've seen dogs and cats being friends, and I've seen dogs being bullied by cats, which is quite a strange thing, right? So if
Actually,
you
they have to play with the dogs, right? They tease them, and then they
yes,
go and climb up a tree or something.
ah,
Okay, and the dog who got irritated under the tree keeps barking and barking, but then
true,
they go and sleep together in the same bed. That's very
absolutely.
strange.
Very common, absolutely. So I'm sure children, you would have watched all this, seen some things like this, right? And if you have, then please do write about it and tell us, because we would like to know what you have observed. But you need to keep your ears and eyes open to observe these things. Otherwise, you'll miss them, right? We need to develop, like the author has rightly told us, that we need to work on our senses, and like the animals and the birds and the insects that he has talked about over here, he talks about how they sensitize themselves. So if we can sensitize ourselves, we will be able to see a lot of these things. And I'd love to hear from all of you what you would like to write in your reflections. So before we end, we still have a minute. So if there is anybody who has quickly thought about sharing something, you can do so. No? All right. Think about it and write and tell us in your reflections. We will meet next week again. So before that, it would be lovely if you could write and tell us some stories. Okay. So Manisha ma'am, over to you. Thank you, children.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for joining. Thank you, Meenakshi, ma'am, and thank you all my dear, lovely students for joining. So we'll be meeting the next week. So be prepared with your write-ups. Send this to me as a reflection, and I'll be happily posting it. Thank you. Good day. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a good Sunday.